We all need to get used to the fact that the post World War II order, as we have known it, is forever changed. As we approach mid year, it should be obvious that we're still in the early innings of this surreal ballgame. Chaos is the new normal. The economic and political ramifications will continue to be felt for the foreseeable future, and the trustworthiness of American politicians and negotiators is now clearly in question. My concern is that too few people weigh the interplay between political developments and their economic impacts. One of the things I find most dismaying is that many people who write about tariffs look at the situation through a strict economics and capital markets lens. It's dangerous, in my view, to be that narrow. Political developments are equally critical. When the Liberation Day tariffs were announced in early April, they applied to 185 countries, in addition to the pre announced tariffs for Canada and Mexico. Tariffs on Russia, Belarus, Cuba, and North Korea were conspicuous in their absence. These were the same countries that voted with the United States by refusing to condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. If this was only about economics and a recalibration of global trade, those countries would have been included in the mix. Political considerations are clearly at play, yet the financial press consistently fails to mention this. There's a very real chance that Donald Trump has reset norms and deliberately thrown the entire world order into chaos because it suits his personal agenda of self-enrichment, crony capitalism, corruption, and autocratic intent. Court orders have been conspicuously ignored. Things have gotten real. 6 months of Donald Trump in the books, 3.5 years to go. The similarities are striking in comparison to what happened in the 1930s and 40s. In 1929, the stock market tumbled after having traded at exceedingly high valuations for years. In response, the American government, led by President Herbert Hoover, imposed the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. Historians and economists say that that single policy decision did more to exacerbate an already bad situation than anything else. The situation in 2025 is similar regarding securities valuations, but the sequencing of events, which is to say the cause and effect, has been reversed. During the Depression, and for nearly a decade, the global economy sputtered, and people became increasingly desperate. Desperate times lead to desperate measures. Autocratic rulers like Adolf Hitler rose to power by demonizing minority groups and airing grievances regarding how the wider world had mistreated his people. Sound familiar? In 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. In 2025, Donald Trump began talking openly about annexing both Greenland, possibly through military force, and Canada, even though both are NATO allies. There's a very real chance that we may be seeing the demise of democracy as we know it south of the border. Given the United States' dominant position in the global world order, the impact could be devastating for all but the very few who are intimately close to power. Many people fear that Donald Trump has a grand scheme that's not rooted in making America great, but in making him and those close to him personally wealthier and more powerful than ever. There are many who think the richest man in the world today is not Elon Musk, but rather Vladimir Putin. The man who exposed Putin, Alexander Navalny, was systematically captured, imprisoned, tortured, and killed by Putin for having the temerity to expose him. It's widely believed that Putin and those close to him gained wealth by extorting Russian oligarchs. He would make them offers they couldn't refuse. They could either give him a significant portion of their wealth or face life in prison, or worse still, accept that they may die mysteriously. There are lots of people who think that Putin has something on Trump. It's possible that the only thing he has is control over his imagination. If Putin can become the richest man in the world by extorting Russian oligarchs, how much richer could Donald Trump become by extorting American corporations and captains of industry? What do we know about him? He doesn't believe in win-win situations. Everything is zero-sum to him. He's a predator on every level who wants everything for himself and who will stop at quite possibly nothing to get it. The famous checks and balances enshrined in the American Constitution have swiftly and systematically been dismantled by him. His cabinet is full of obedient and obsequious sycophants. It looks very much like Donald Trump is setting himself up for the biggest power grab, financial, political, and military, in history. The Democratic Party seems ill-equipped and unwilling to stand up to him. Will anyone be able to stop him? The on-again, off-again tariffs seem like a geopolitical exercise in game theory ultimatums. where exceptions and carve-outs are only offered to donors and political, though not necessarily democratic, friends who share his agenda. Political grift masquerading as economic strategy. A week after the global tariffs were announced, they were put on pause for 90 days. This was an attempt to narrow what had been an unprecedented trade war between the United States and most of the world to a showdown between the US and China. The S&P 500 index jumped by 9.5% after the announcement. More than a few people believe this is highly likely to be an example of stock market manipulation. Trump even has his own cryptocurrency, and the primary use for cryptocurrency these days is money laundering. People in the economic press accept the premise that there's an economic master plan while all but ignoring the greater likelihood that the master plan is one of autocratic control over the entire hemisphere. The drama over Trump's tariffs is far from over, as the administration now prepares to engage in country-by-country negotiations. In the meantime, countries subject to the pause will now be tariffed at 10%, still the highest level in modern history. It seems the art of the deal is now code for systemic extortion at the highest level. The man is playing Russian roulette with the global economy, and things will likely get worse before they get better. Here are some possible outcomes. Stagflation. This is the easiest prediction and the most likely outcome. The last time the world experienced stagflation was half a century ago in the aftermath of the oil price shocks beginning with the OPEC embargo. In an economy that struggles to grow, while dealing with inflation, it's often best to invest in tangible assets. Civil unrest, possibly even civil war. There, I said it. Geopolitical and demographic commentators like George Friedman and Neil Howe have been insisting that this was a possible outcome for many years. The most recent book published by hedge fund manager Ray Dalio tells a similar story of how empires rise and fall. There are some who say that based on the risk of losing reserve currency status because of a $37 trillion national debt, the United States is in the twilight of its global hegemony. Trump's tariffs may be seen as a mere accelerant of an otherwise inevitable decline. Global conflict. Just when you thought the options couldn't get any worse. The economic and political turmoil of the 1930s did not end until a power-mad elected politician tried to take over half the Western world. And had Japan not miscalculated in December of 1941, that fellow might have gotten away with it. Neil Howe has pointed out the uncomfortable fact that the United States goes to war every 80 years or so. The Revolutionary War was in 1776, Civil War was from 1861 to 1865, the Second World War is from 1941 to 1945, and whether the war that might be coming is domestic or international, the timing looks chilling. Geopolitical tensions are the highest they've been since the early 1960s, and pre-existing regional wars consistently threaten to expand. This is not the time to have an unpredictable Putin-esque criminal in the White House. This brings us back to economics, financial planning, and investing. Likely outcomes and timing can't be foreseen with anything resembling reliability. The best thing anyone can do is recognize the general circumstances and take proactive and protective steps to mitigate possible future harm. We all need to remain agile as circumstances unfold. Know yourself. Revisit, and if necessary, revise your financial plan. Can you really handle the risk your portfolio is taking, or have you succumbed to industry bullshit that blithely tells people to stay calm and stay invested no matter what the circumstances are? If you think you might buckle due to uncertainty, you will likely cave if things get bad enough. Nervous investors should consider these options. If you haven't already done so, consider lowering exposure to equities immediately. Depending on what happens to credit risk, you might want to lower exposure to bonds too. Virtually anything else is likely to do better than traditional assets in the medium term. Look for uncorrelated assets that have a strong cash flow. I'm using a product that pays royalties from recording artists, for instance. Consider increasing exposure to tangible assets like real estate, commodities, and gold. Increase your liquidity and hold off on major discretionary purchases. Focus on preservation of wealth more than the accumulation of it. Inverse notes might protect people if major markets tumble further. These are structured products that go up when indices like the S&P 500 go down, and they're excellent hedges to guard against loss aversion, a well-known behavioral bugaboo. Our parents and grandparents lived through extremely challenging times while we've had it easy. Many people feel entitled, and a comfortable and ever improving quality of life is something that they haven't really realized how good they have it. Things can absolutely get worse. It looks as though we're heading into our generation's time in the wilderness. I've spent the past few years railing against optimism bias, and this surprises people because those who know me often describe me as an optimist. Optimism bias is when you acknowledge that bad things happen, but you don't think they're going to happen to you. A classic example is divorce. Everyone accepts that 40% to 50% of all marriages in the West end in divorce, yet virtually no newlyweds think that that fate will befall them personally. Now, I'm not saying that any outcome is predetermined. I am saying the possible outcomes noted here are distinct possibilities, and that you would be naive to think otherwise.